Good afternoon. You're making me feel hungry. I prioritise loo over food. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jo Lynch from CAM Research and Insight. We are a hospitality research agency, consultancy, so we specialise only in this industry, this amazing industry, in research and insight for operators, suppliers, including a lot of tech companies. So hopefully we've got some really good nuggets for you today on my topic, which is, does technology have an age limit? So I've slightly titled it different. So what role does technology play in the customer journey for Gen Z versus a boomer? Still looking at that age limit. And I've got a multitude of slides here with lots of data on from various different projects we've done over the past 6 months or so. So you'll find there's a lot of mix here. I'm very happy to share the deck afterwards for anyone that wants to see it. At least the screen is a little bit bigger here than it is over on the other stage that my colleague had earlier where you couldn't see a thing. So hopefully you can read it okay. So first of all, at CAM, we did a big piece of research late last year on the golden years, so the older generation. So if any of you haven't seen the golden years presentation at all, I'm very happy to share it separately. But also, if you go to the vision stage at 3 o'clock today, Katie, our MD, is actually doing the entire golden years presentation as well, which is very much around that older generation. What do they want from hospitality businesses? Everything in terms of environment, but including tech as well. So what do the golden years look for when they're choosing a venue? They look at this age group is really important because they can really help you potentially be busier in your shoulder periods. You know, when you're quieter, what can you do to encourage this older age group in? How do they look for choosing a venue? They like to choose somewhere local. They like to go to places they've been to before. They love recommendations. They're less reliant on looking up things online. They are more about word of mouth, and I feel comfortable going there because I've been there before. So they do use the internet generally for searching for venues. They do use social media. Even my 77-year-old mum has gone onto Facebook for the first time ever. They do use that. What we don't see them using, perhaps not surprisingly, is TikTok and Instagram. Probably no surprise there. Actually, nil on our survey. And Twitter and Facebook actually much lower. So actually social media for this age group is less prevalent. It's more about internet searches. So how important is digital marketing as a tool for driving footfall to operator businesses? And just for reference, I actually came from an operator business before I joined CAM. I worked as head of local marketing at the Big Table Group, which is Café Rouge, Bella Italia, Las Iguanas. So this is a slide that really resonates with me because I had Café Rouge, which was the much older generation, and Bella Italia, which was sort of everybody, and then Las Iguanas, who really wasn't my age group at all, but I tried. This is some research we did, particularly on these 3 age groups, and it's index versus a national representation. So what we can see from this is actually, as I've said in the previous slide, that social media is much less prevalent for the older generation. It's almost inconsequential to them. So don't rely on social media if you want to attract the older generation into your business. What you can see here is what the younger generation like is Google's Near Me search tool. So actually that's a really great part to invest in your Google search terminology. Bookings and websites. Booking websites are really sort of very, very much the same over everybody. So, you know, if you've got a bookings platform, then actually that appeals to all age groups. As you can see, social really drops off for the older generation completely. But general internet searches actually are less relevant on the younger generation because they use TikTok, Instagram, social media more than looking for an internet search. But the Google's Near Me search tool is relevant to that age group. So customers don't flex their behaviour to suit the venue. The venue really must flex their behaviour to suit the customer. And it's really important to think about it that way. Don't rely on your customer just to find you. Think about the ways you can actually attract your customer to come to you. You can use social channels to tell your brand story, and that's really important because different stories will resonate with different age groups. What we can see here is that the younger age group really want to hear about sustainability and business ethics. That's really, really important to them. But to the older age group, it's almost irrelevant. They're not actually that bothered about sustainability and ethics. What they do want to see is engagement in their local community, because that's important to them. And as a previous head of local marketing, that's really good to see from my point of view, because that's an important area. But actually, overall, none of the older age group weren't actually bothered particularly about any of that. So my message would be, if you want to attract the younger age group, talk about your sustainability, talk about your ethics, talk about what's on your menu in terms of, is it organic, is it vegan, does the wine have sulfites, and that type of thing. It gives you a perfect opportunity to create content here on your social media platforms for the different age groups. So the older generation actually want to hear more about offers if they're going to use social media, whereas the younger generation want to know why they should come to you because of those important attributes that they have of the sustainability and the ethics. Okay. So we had a look at some research around touch screens, and I found this actually quite interesting, that we asked the question, if you had your food and drink menus on a touchscreen device, and you could search for it and filter out allergens and all of that type of thing, how important would that be to you? Would it appeal to you? And actually, even in the older generation, over 50% are saying they'd like that. You know, most people these days have a touchscreen device of some sort. Again, my 77-year-old mother now has an iPhone. She can just about manage that. It's a really important consideration to make. It must make your menus easier to update, you know, not relying on all that paper. But actually, you can see the younger age group, 75% of them would really welcome a touchscreen device to be able to select their menus and not have to go wading through an allergen menu. They can filter it out digitally by doing that. So this sort of gives an example of what I've just spoken about. Your staff are your absolute heart of your business. And actually, in our golden years data, which, as I said, you can see Katie present that at 3 o'clock on the vision stage, what we saw from that is the older generation really still want that personal service. It's actually less relevant to the younger generation. It's still really, really important, but it's the older generation. They want that high level of customer service and customer satisfaction when their staff are dealing with them. So actually, the knowledge of your staff is really important, and they can't even begin to know every single thing about every single item on your menu, every single bottle of wine. So this gives an example from our wine white paper we did last year, where we talked about, is it important to you as the black line is the total age group, and the blue is the Gen Z, the younger people. They want to know about sustainability, organic, biodynamic, vegan wines. This is where, if it's all on a digitalised menu, it's going to make it much easier for your staff to deal with, because they won't have to necessarily answer all those questions. It could be on the paper menu as well, but actually what we're seeing here is that the Gen Z want to know all about that stuff. And that comes back to the previous slides where they said they wanted to know about ethics and sustainability as well. Would they like to see these credentials on the menus? Yes, definitely, for the Gen Z, has come out really highly there. So it's just really important for them to know all about that stuff. So it's a real generational thing. The younger generation wants it, the older, not so bothered. They want that interaction with the staff member. There's also an opportunity to use tech in the form of social media, digital marketing. The older generation, as you'd see from Katie's presentation, actually like leaflets through the door. I mean, it's old school, but it works for them. Is there an opportunity to use tech to upsell a more premium offer? And actually, if you look at it by age group, and our example here was, if you had the choice of 3 standard G&Ts or 2 premium G&Ts, or substitute that for vodka, rum, whiskey, whatever, would you take up the premium offer, which is going to be better for margin, right, to have that? Got to be much better. And actually, the younger generation said, yeah, 2/3 of them said, if you can tell me somehow using technology or whatever method that I can have this offer, that's going to be better for me. I'd take up that offer over the standard offer. So a little bit of a random one in there, but I just thought I'd give an example of how you could potentially use your tech to promote that offer. So how important is the perception of a venue's technology across the generations? Now, this was a more focused piece of research on pubs more specifically, but actually it resonates across hospitality operators generally. So half of all the people surveyed felt that pubs were on a par with other hospitality and retail providers. 31% feel that pubs have fallen behind in technology as restaurants have really advanced, particularly over, dare I say it, the last 3 years. 3 years today, apparently, since that dreaded lockdown day. And actually, technology had to move on really rapidly in COVID. You know, order and pay became something that absolutely everybody really had to put in or be completely behind the curve. But it's felt generally that the pubs are now on a par with other hospitality venues. The younger demographics actually, though, feel that pubs are slightly behind other hospitality venues in terms of tech. So if you're a pub operator, I'd say have another look at your tech and, you know, what can you be doing more to help your customers? Okay, we did some research late last year for Mr. Yum, who some of you might have come across. I don't know if anyone from Mr. Yum has appeared. I can't see anybody. But we did some research specifically for them last year on consumers using tech generally. And one of the questions was, are customers using more technology? Probably, again, not surprisingly, especially since COVID, they felt that more customers are using technology. 36% were not sure, and 12% felt that less technology is being used. Sorry. The challenge here has got to be the volume of consumer options an operator has in their tech stack. You know, having come from an operator business, I know how many bits of tech we had within that business, whether it was customer facing, i.e. EPOS, order and pay, booking platform, CRM in terms of email, social media. But if you think then about the wider implications to a GM or the operating team or the marketing team, the procurement team, you had procurement, you had HR, you had recruitment and all of that. So actually the tech stack generally appears to have got a lot bigger for operators. And that can be a real challenge. Now, a lot of the tech talks to each other, which is brilliant. And again, in Big Table, we had lots of tech that talked to each other. So Joss is sat here from Zonal. We used Zonal in Big Table, and it talked to the bookings platform, which talked to our order and pay, which talked to this, which talked to that. And that's really important. But it is a challenge for operators to have to think about their tech stack and how big that tech stack is these days. Should they be introducing more tech? What we're seeing from the data is customers want more tech. So, you know, I've been talking about digitalized menus. That's another piece of tech. But actually, if it integrates into everything you already have, customers want it. So it's got to be a positive thing. So again, from the Mr. Yum research, what we're seeing is a more diverse group are actually using tech. So the first question is around how many of you agree that actually tech is being more widely used by a diverse group in terms of age? Are they retired? Are they students? What are their demographics? Are they families? Are they individuals? And actually 81% of people are saying they agree that technology is being used by a more diverse group, which has got to be great if you're a tech operator, right? A tech supplier. Is it being used by more people than it was 12 months ago? Yeah, 79% people are saying yes, it is being more than even 12 months ago. And this, as I say, was only done at the end of last year, this research, so it still is very relevant and up to date. Is technology being embraced by a large number of people and not just the younger generations? It's starting to fall slightly here, but actually well over half are saying yes, it is being embraced by all generations. And is it wanted by all ages? And again, over half are saying yes, it's wanted by all ages. There's a lot of strongly disagrees in those last two questions, which potentially are from the older generation that perhaps answered this survey. But actually, generally, what we're seeing is that yes, people do want tech and they want more of it, not just those Gen Zs and the millennials. Okay, we also did some research last year for TipJar, the tipping platform, which, so the reason I've included this in a tech presentation is actually it is a piece of technology. It does need to sit with your EPOS and all of that as well. But what we're seeing is that consumers are in 60% of consumers are for tipping in hospitality. But actually, tipping for the younger age group is more relevant than ever. What you can see there is the older you get, the tighter you get, and the less you're likely to tip. But that comes back to what I said at the beginning, that the older generation expect outstanding customer service, personal customer service from the team member that is serving them. So Gen Z, definitely, like 3/4 are in favour of tipping. Now, it could be that actually a lot of those Gen Zs apparently could be students who are perhaps working in hospitality themselves to fund their way through university, or they have friends that are working in hospitality. Perhaps it's down to that. But actually, generally, the younger generation want to tip. We talked with customers around, are they for a service charge being automatically added to a bill? It's a very contentious area. And what you can see here, there's the older generation, it's an absolute no. Only 1 in 10 said they would be in agreement with it. Whereas in the younger generation, they're more happy with that. But it is about how you communicate it, and that's really important, that if it's not communicated well, actually that's not going to help anybody. You've got to tell people about it. That comes back to how you tell people about it. Do you tell them on social media? Not if they're in the older generation. Do you tell them through email marketing? Do you tell them through your website? Do you make sure it's really clear on your menus? So that research was all around tipping and how important that is for that generation. A lot of consumers, 2 in 3, don't understand where the non-cash tips go. So that is again about transparency with your consumer, with your customer. How transparent are you if you're an operator on talking to your customer about where the tips go? Sometimes it gets called out on menus, sometimes it will get called out on websites, but actually people want to know. Again, less relevant for the older generation who perhaps are less worried about it, because actually, as we've seen, they don't like tipping so much as the younger generation anyway. But actually, what this is showing is that people do want to know about where the tips go. They don't understand at the moment where tips go. So, final bit on the tip jar is that 1 in 2 customers would be more likely to visit a venue if they knew that those cash tips were being shared with the team. So you can see this slide particularly is split out male-female, which is actually pretty much identical, which is probably unusual. The Gen Z and the millennials and the up to 34 very highly saying they're more likely to go to a venue if they know where those tips are being shared. But again, to the older generation, it's still actually highly relevant, but slightly less relevant than that young generation. So what these slides in conjunction with tip jar show is that actually talk to your customers about where the tips are going, how they're calculated, is it included, and how can you actually make the tips as well. So in summary, different generations will use lots of different channels, as we've seen, to research and interact with hospitality businesses. They want to know as much as they can possibly know. So for the older generation, it's all about the venue research. They'll do it on the internet. For the younger generation, it's pretty much all about social media. If you've got a great TikTok channel and you want to attract that younger generation, brilliant. If you want to attract a mix of people, don't rely on TikTok. And I've seen quite a lot of businesses recently start to rely more heavily on TikTok, and a lot of them really successfully. But if you want to attract that younger generation, the older generation, don't just rely on social media. How customers use a menu and how they want to see changes, they vary by generation. We've talked about digitalised menus, but actually the older generation are quite happy to use digitalised menus. We've talked about transparency on menus, so calling out the ethics, the sustainability, the tipping process and where those tips go. More customers are using tech in hospitality. You know, we see it across all generations, but the perception of the use of that technology does vary in the age groups. The younger demographics are more likely to want to see the service charge added on automatically. The older generation just don't want to tip at all, it appears, but we'll get around that one. Older generation are much less likely to know where the non-cash tips are going. So for me, the overarching message is to look at your customer base. You know, are you looking at all age groups? Don't just rely on one piece of tech to one generation of age group. Look at your tech, look at your tech stack, look at your menu, look at your marketing, look at your ops team, how they communicate. Actually, look at your staff who interact with people in the restaurants. If it's the older generation, they want that love. If it's the younger generation, they're not so bothered. They're more likely to want to know about ethics and sustainability. So that is me. At CAM, we have a knowledge hub. It's free to sign up to. There is also a paid option which gives you access to absolutely everything we produce, unless it's a private project for a customer. So there's lots of white papers. You can see on here we've got a low and no presentation. There's a low and no presentation from Blake, our strategy director, tomorrow, if you're here tomorrow. As I mentioned, Katie is doing the Golden Years presentation on the Vision stage at 3 o'clock if you want to see the whole older generation presentation. There's lots of different white papers available, some in abbreviated format, but if you pay for the Access All Areas option, you basically will get to see everything we produce on there. And finally, if you want a copy of my presentation or you want to ask me any questions, please drop me a line. I'm going to be wandering around today. I'll hang around here for a little bit afterwards. But give me a shout. If you want a copy of this or you want a copy of Katie's Golden Years presentation, if you can't get to see her later, just let me know. I'm happy to send a copy out to anyone. Are there any questions? I don't want any questions, but I will answer questions. I'm really scared of questions. I haven't sworn yet either, so I've done really well. Paul, I haven't sworn. No questions. Fabulous. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.